Let's talk about the second assignment. So in this second assignment, the goal is to become familiar with using JavaScript as a means of interacting with the browser. Right. First, we'll introduce the low-level working, low-level ways of talking to the DOM and the browser. We'll use jQuery, JavaScript, and a combination of JavaScript and jQuery. And again, certainly there's a step up from JavaScript to jQuery, but then there'll be another step up between from jQuery to React, right? Just like JavaScript is low level, looking at it from jQuery, from looking at it from React, also jQuery is kind of low level, right? So there's different layers of abstraction. So at least we want to get a good chance to play around with jQuery so that we know we've done it. If asked to do it, we can certainly learn about it more. Again, we're only going to do a very small sliver of what jQuery can do. Certainly very, very powerful, and I'll encourage you to play around with it. So to practice using jQuery, what we're going to do is we're going to build a very simple user admin page, right? In this user admin page, we're going to have presumably this would be only accessible to system administrators, that they can add users, delete users, update their information. They can change their passwords and whatnot, okay? And it's rendered as a simple table. And in the table, you have several controls up here. The list here is dynamically rendered. It's going to go out to a server, and the server is going to retrieve an array of JSON objects, and it's going to dynamically iterate over that JSON object, and it's going to dynamically add these rows into the table. Okay. Yes.
So that array of JSON objects, is that going to be just like in one of our JavaScript files?
So we have a server, right, that's running on Heroku, and all of you can access it, and you just need to distinguish amongst yourself by using your NUID or your username. I'm sorry?
You posted it?
Yeah, we're hosted it, and you can post data, you can retrieve data, you can update, you can delete content. Yes. And obviously, if you know somebody's NUID or somebody's username, then you can screw up their data. So please stick to your NUID or your username, so which is unique, and then you can just edit your content. Yes. All right. So what's going to happen here is that you're going to use JavaScript and jQuery to listen for these commands of here, where you can add a new user, you can edit or update an existing user, you can delete an existing user, or you can select a user for editing. Okay. So the first thing when the page comes up is going to do an HTTP request to the server, and the server says, "Hey, what are my users for Januzi?" Right, and it's going to come back, and you're going to populate it. You can dynamically populate it and render it. You should be able to just click on that user, right, and just poof, it's gone. Or if you click on the pencil, it will do another query to the server for that particular ID of a user. It'll retrieve that user and populate the form up here, right, where you can then update that user. Obviously, you'll need to remember the ID of the user you selected somehow, and you can change their username, their first name, the last name, their role. You click on the OK, and it's going to do a put on the server, right, to update the data back on the server. If you want to create a brand new user, you enter username, password, first name, last name, and you click on the plus. It's going to do a post. It should do a post to the server with a brand new user data that's sent out to the server, and then it should re-render that brand new user at the bottom, right, of the list. Yes, makes sense. All right, so it's pretty simple. I'll demonstrate how to use the server. We'll instead of we'll build something that looks similar to this but not this. Something maybe like movies or something with movie titles and ratings and whatnot, and I'll show you how to use the server, right? And then you're tasked with using what we learned here in class, and we practice to then go off and complete this particular assignment. Okay. So that's the wireframe for the user admin. It's again following the naming convention that we talked about last right? Implement the user admin in this file called user admin template.client.html, right? Meaning the naming convention is that the feature that you're building, right? The role of this file in the entire application, the where is this being executed, whether it's executing on the browser or it's executing on the server, where is it executing, and then the format, it's HTML, CSS, whatnot. Then we have here the styling sheet. The style sheet, if you're not overriding anything from Bootstrap or you don't have any of your own styles for this particular file, then you can let this file is optional, right? But if you're overriding something, maybe you don't like this, you don't like Bootstrap's rounded corners, or you don't like the borders or the paddings or whatever, and you're overriding Bootstrap, then please put your overridings here in your CSS file. Okay. The JavaScript, we're going to have this naming convention. It's the same thing, user admin, client, JS, and whatnot. But we're going to call it a component. A component. This is hinting at where we're going a little later with React and Angular. Okay, React and Angular call their JavaScript files that control or manipulate the HTML. Right, they call them components. Right, hinting at the fact that they use a component-based infrastructure. Okay, the naming convention is that they have exactly the same name as the HTML that they're related to, right? But the HTML side is referred to as a template, and the logic part is referred to as a component. Yes, right? We don't have components really here because we don't have modules, we don't have any of that, right? So it's not a real component, but it's looking ahead at the naming convention when we get to React, when we get to Angular. This file here is somewhat optional, but it would represent the object of a user, right? It's username, password, first name, last name. It's like a data object which represents each instance in each row. And here we have a service file. This service file is responsible for any data manipulation or data communication with the server, right? So the server is going to hold all the data, right? And we need to go and fetch it, right? Because here, as HTML and JavaScript, we don't have any data, right? The data all lives on the server. So all data access will be responsible this service file. Yes. Okay. Notice that it's following a structure, right? Of division of concerns, right? Any concern on how to manipulate or render the content is handled in the HTML. Any concerns on how to handle user input, handling events, data manipulation, that's handled on the JavaScript, and any communication with the server is all handled through the service layer, right? So here you'll have, go fetch me all the users, create me a brand new user, delete this user, update this user, right? Find this user by ID, right? So all data communication is through that service, yes? And that pattern is going to repeat over and over throughout the semester. This is the first time we'll get a chance to practice that, yes? It's a very, very common way of splitting out different divisions of concern in large applications. So we'll get a chance to practice that here. So the template here is a beginning of what the template might look like. The user admin template. Here it's only looking at the of what the head might look like. It's loading Bootstrap, right? It's loading Font Awesome for you. It's loading your CSS file if you have one. Yes, right? It's also loading jQuery. It's also loading the service layer to go and fetch data from the server. And finally, it's loading your component file that is the logic and the brains of how the content is going to be manipulated. Okay. It also gives you a snippet of code of what the table might look like. A table head in the first row, you have username, password, first name, last name. Also, just introduces entities. These are characters that beyond the ASCII characters that you can display on screen. HTML and browsers can display many more characters, Unicode characters that don't have a character representation but have a numeral or symbolic representation. NBSP is a non-breaking space, right? If you want to add spaces, little spaces, typically a browser ignores, lots of spaces, right? It collapses all spaces into just one single space. But if you want to force the browser to actually render more spaces, you can do that with a non-breaking space. We'll demo that in a minute. Later, we're here. We're giving you a snippet of how to get started with the first row of input fields, right? This first row over here, this first row, right? What the headers might look like, this first row, what it might look like. So we're giving you that. So the first headers here, the input for the form. Here's the input forms. Yes. Here's a drop down for choosing the role of the user. I don't know if you can see that from below, from way up back there. Searching. I've made this optional. Folks find this as well, at least on the undergrad. I'm going to make this optional. This is a little more involved, trying to find one of the options. One of the features that I have my grad folks do is also do a search, right? Where I can say, oh well, I want to find all students, right? So I can select here students and do a search, and then it retrieves all the students. Or I can select the faculty. I can say search, and then it retrieves all the faculty, right? Or I can find folks that have this particular last name, or their first name starts with, or username starts with, right? And then you click on find, and then it just re-renders with those users, right? I'm gonna make it optional. If you want to play around with that, go ahead. But I make it optional for the undergrads. Let's see, where are we? Okay. The row, in the row, here, one typical way of achieving these rows, one way to achieve this row is to declare a row as a template, right? A row that is hidden, that is not shown to the user, but it's in the document. Yes, right. And one typical way to do this is to have jQuery, grab that template row, right? Clone it, populate it, put the username, put the first name, put the last name, put the role, clone it all in memory, and then append it, right, to the table. Yes, right. But use a template that is already there, hidden from view, so users don't see it. But it's there so that you can folks can style it, right? The CSS folks and our styling folks can make it look pretty, and maybe they'll give you an example of what the row should look like, right? And so you can just clone that template and then just copy and paste it, right? Very, very common technique. And React and Angular use that technique as well, right? They have a template and then just copy and paste it into the DOM. So I give you an example of what that template might look like. Let's see. No, that's the form. And here's the template row. So in the body, here's a TR. Notice that the TR has a couple of classes. One has the class webdev template. This allows the JavaScript to say, ooh, grab me the template. Right? Grab me the template from the DOM. Okay. Once you have it cloned, then you clone it inside in the code. Then you would remove this class programmatically. You would remove the webdev hidden. Presumably, webdev hidden would change display to none so that you can't see it. And then you would grab all these TDs, right? And you would replace the content with whatever actual username, whatever actual first name, whatever actual last name it is, right? Once you clone it, it's in memory. Then you can put it back into the DOM, right, and append it at the end. Yes, right. And we'll see how to do that in a minute. Finally, reminding you to just commit and push everything. Styling, user model is also optional. Here's the beginnings of what the JavaScript might look like. Notice that it's using the iffy design pattern, right? That it's storing all my name variables all inside of this function here, meaning that I am not littering the namespace. Right? All my variables are contained inside of this pseudo module, right? So if JavaScript or if jQuery or any of these other libraries happens to have a function that is called create user or select user or whatever, I'm not clobbering their functions, right? I'm not clobbering their variables. Yes, right? Again, JavaScript unfortunately does not have naming, so this is a very common technique to hide, all our work and not have it clobber everybody else's work. Yes. Okay. So yeah, so the component has declares all the variables that it needs, right? It declares all the fields, it declares all the buttons that it needs, right? The remove buttons, the edit buttons. Also, it instantiates the user admin services. This is the object that we're going to need to be able to talk to the server. And here's where our code starts, where our logic starts in this main. And then here are the event handlers, right? If we click on the plus sign, it's going to invoke this create user. If we click on the delete on a row, right, it's going to invoke this delete user. If we click on the OK button, it's going to invoke this update user, and so on and so forth, right? These two functions are helper functions where render users might be a function that is called when you go out to the server. You have the array of users, and then you can pass it to the render of users, right? And then render of users can iterate over that array, and then call another helper function, a render user, and pass each user, as it goes. And then this one is actually the one responsible for cloning the content, right? Populating it and putting it back into the DOM, right? So yeah, so we're gonna do something similar to this, but instead of users, we'll play around with movies. Okay, so we have descriptions of each one of these. All right, this needs to run on your server, an actual server. I have provided a server for you. It's located here. It's called webdev generic server.heroku.com, and it's used as follows. I'll demo it in a minute, but it starts with a /API, some unique identifier, right? It could be your NUID, or it could be your username, your Blackboard username, which should also be unique. Yes, and then / whatever you want to store. Here it's users. Right? In our example, it's going to be movies, right? But you can have any whatever as long as you're consistent. Right. In our example, we'll be using users, right, for this assignment. Yes. And here you're going to have all the data communication is going to live here in this admin user service client which is going to provide all the data from the server to the rest of the application. Okay. All right. So that's the assignment. We're going to build something together here in class, which should help you to get started with this assignment. Yes. We moved that over to assignment 3. I forget, 3 or I think 3 or 4. I forget. Yes.
Is this going to interact in any way with our work
from assignment 1? From assignment, no, it's not. This is a completely separate HTML file, completely separate JavaScript file.
When we submit, should we be like
But it should all live on the same application. Yeah. And your index file should have a link to get to this page. Okay, like we will.
Hi everyone, Jose here. Please remember to subscribe and like the video. And if you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. Thank you.